Hello and a warm welcome to another edition of To The Point. While the government has demonetized 86% of its high-value currency notes and the nation is still grappling with the outcomes of this move, questions are being raised on the fallout of the GST and also on the timely rollout of the goods and services tax. Joining me now is BJD leader Baijayant Jay Panda. Welcome, Jay, on To The Point. My first question to you is that now with the centre and the states, they have been unable to draft the required laws on GST. How realistic is the April 1st, 2017 deadline?
It's a bit tragic because it was on the verge of getting resolved. A lot of progress had been made in the last 6 months with the constitutional amendment in Parliament, then 50% of the states passing it, and the empowered committee of the state finance ministers was dealing with it very well. And with this demonetization issue, some states and some parties have not been so happy, and as a result we are all aware that it has run into difficulty. If it were to get delayed, I think it would be tragic, because GST, in my opinion, is the single biggest reform move, at least since 1991, if not earlier. It would make India a single market for the first time, and that's a very, very important requirement.
But when you talk about the practical aspects of a country like India, and you also take into account two disruptive policies taking off in the same year within a span of 6 months, is the nation really prepared for this kind of a disruptive policy?
So that is an aspect that is being raised by some people. I don't see the two as connected, and I think it is high time we start taking big policy decisions.
But why do you say that the two are not connected at the moment?
Let me explain. So one of the arguments against GST now, even the people who had agreed are now saying it should be delayed, is because they think that there will be a loss to the economy. Number one, whatever loss there might be to the states on account of GST has already been committed by the union government to be compensated to the state governments. So that is not really relevant. Secondly, I think it will be like VAT was a dozen years ago. This whole issue about how much loss and how much center will compensate delayed the whole thing by several years. But in the event, there was hardly any compensation required, because the growth to the economy was so good that states did not experience any loss of revenue. So this is the tragedy. Now, whatever be the argument on demonetization, GST really is not connected, simply because if there is any loss of revenue, it would be reimbursed by the union government. That has already been agreed.
So the entire hullabaloo about connecting demonetization with GST at the moment, people are generally the political class. They are talking about the economic fallout or the political fallout of it, because I was reading some reports at how the BJP ruled states, the state leaders and the state cadres, they are all going and telling the leadership that look, the political fallout is really going to be bad. You can't have two disruptive policies just within a span of 6 months. People are not prepared.
I can't comment on what the BJP states are telling, but I can tell you Odisha is run by the BJD. And we are in the opposition, and there are many issues on which we do actually oppose the union government. We have disputes on the Mahanadi River, we have disputes on the Polavaram Dam, which we feel are going to have a very detrimental effect to large populations in Odisha. But when it comes to something for the national good, when it comes to something that is good for the national economy, we have supported, and we have supported both GST as well as demonetization. Let's be very clear. Demonetization does come with a great deal of problems. We know about massive inconvenience to millions of people all across the country. We have in fact even heard tragic cases of people dying while on lines. There are also arguments about the disruption it will do to the economy. But we have supported it because of the basic principle. There are two things here. Number one, it is the first major step against black money, which is a real scourge for our country. Number two, it incentivizes large portion of our unaccounted economy to come into the formal economy. This is good for the country. It raises more taxes, it gives more revenues. There are many other benefits to come from this. Now, many parties have taken a stand either pro or against without looking at both sides. We are pro demonetization, but we are also very sensitive to the problems that people have faced. In Odisha,
but how, when you talk about Odisha, how has your state responded to the demonetization shock, and now that you're saying that the two are not connected, how ready will it be for the GST?
So let me explain. Now we supported demonetization right away. In fact, I tweeted my support within an hour of the announcement by the Prime Minister. My party supported it very quickly. Odisha has taken proactive steps. The Chief Minister Naveen Patnaik has proactively conducted meetings right from the next morning after demonetization was announced. Lot of coordination has been done with banks. Our panchayat offices were opened up to ensure cash distribution did not suffer. Not to say that there aren't problems. There are problems. We are facing problems, and Odisha is dealing with it in a constructive manner, not in an obstructive manner. Now, regarding GST, as I said, we have supported GST. The issue now is it's getting very tight. To have an April 1st rollout, we really should be sorting out all the nitty-gritties that are left in the empowered committee. Should have already been done or any day now, and that is looking a little tight.
What according to you is the biggest factor which is holding back the GST? Are they the economic issues? Are they the political issues? How would you really delineate them?
As I have explained a little bit earlier, I don't think there is any economic logic to holding back GST. There may be political considerations.
But what about things like cross-empowerment, the dual control of the SSCs? That is one very big factor which is holding back the GST at the moment, and even Arun Jaitley mentioned it, and he said that maybe in the further meetings we could thrash out this issue. How serious is this issue, and how is your state also responding to this dual control bit?
If you turn the clock back 5 weeks, none of these seem to be serious issues at all, because the broad principles had been agreed, and it was there was a clear sentiment among all the parties involved that these are issues that will be resolved through discussion and negotiation. Now, I think the basic sentiment has changed for some key players post demonetization in the 5 weeks. So, you know, if you have a fundamental disagreement on the major political and economic direction of the country, then even tiny issues or small issues will become very big. In a normal course, none of these are unresolvable.
But do you think that cooperative federalism has also taken its toll? For example, when Kerala Finance Minister Isaac Thomas says that unilaterally the central government tried to destroy the cooperative sector, which accounts for about 1/3 of Kerala's deposits. So how can you expect a state like Kerala to shake hands with the central government? So giving you examples like these, do you really feel that cooperative federalism has taken a toll because of demonetization, and the ties between the center and various states are under strain?
The same Kerala Finance Minister just a few weeks ago was being celebrated around the country for standing on principle that GST is good for the country, and how he was going against political groupings that he represents and stood for national interest, and he was taking a very positive role. Now, I don't know if he actually said what you said he said, but if he did, it's a little odd that because you have a disagreement on demonetization, you say how can we shake hands with the center on an issue that you yourself have been championing for a long time. So I think that those are politics at play. That's not economics at play.
But as I was talking to you about the dual and the cross empowerment and the dual control, various parties are talking about the vertical and horizontal divisions between center and states. And there have also been reports that, you know, this issue of cross empowerment might be put to vote. But so far, the way the GST Council meetings have progressed, we have always seen that there has been a debate, a discussion, and then trying to resolve things by consensus. But of late, we have seen reports coming to the fore saying that this issue might be put to vote. So will this kind of a step not leave some kind of a bad taste and set a bad precedent at the way the GST Council meetings have progressed?
I think we have a tendency to complicate things that don't need to be complicated. Okay. Now, the GST, having been approved in principle all across the country, has got caught in these nitty-gritties of dual control and cross empowerment. It should have been kept as simple as possible. I think it is not as simple as it could have been, but even then, it is better than not having a GST, and we should implement it and then deal with it as we go along. Now, the point you have raised about whether by discussion or by voting, obviously it's such a major change. It is much better to have buy-in from all sides, from all states and all parties. So the way it was progressing through discussion would have been the best way. But we have a crisis coming because, as the finance minister has pointed out, the constitutional amendment has passed with not only parliament but 50% of the states have passed it, which means from September next year, neither the union government nor any of the states can raise any taxes unless we come up with a substitute for what used to be, and the substitute is GST. So we are heading towards a constitutional crisis, and in that event, we cannot allow the wait for consensus to bring the country to that crisis situation. So ideally, I would prefer that we continue the discussions and resolve it. Otherwise, I think it seems inevitable that it may lead to some kind of a vote.
Looking at the way the things are progressing now, another GST Council meeting will come up in a few days' time. How hopeful are you about the meetings progressing in a positive manner?
I'm worried. I have said this on several occasions. I think to play this kind of high stakes gamble with the country's future is very worrisome, and at least where we had already reached agreement on the basics of GST, I think we should just go ahead. Regarding the nitty-gritties that still remain, I'm crossing my fingers and hoping that good sense will prevail, but I must admit I'm worried.
Looking at the way this winter session has passed on, it's almost coming to an end, and we haven't seen any serious business being transacted. And we have seen that petty politics has come in the way of discussions, whether it was on demonetization or whether it was on GST. Obviously, the bill hasn't come in. What is the kind of message which the political class is sending across? People who are watching the parliament proceedings, they feel that neither the government nor the opposition is serious about transacting any business.
Petty politics is not new. It has been around for a long time, and people are increasingly getting angry and disgusted at it. The last 6 months had given us some hope because we saw Parliament functioning. Not only GST, but many other bills were passed in the previous 2 sessions before the winter session. But this resumption of petty politics has led to, again, this dysfunctionality of Parliament. I have written about that a lot. I have written about the rules that we need to change. Our Parliament functions on the basis of 19th century rules which are consensus based. That means anybody, any party, can hold Parliament to ransom by withholding consent in a consensus. We must modernize our Parliament like other parliaments have done. Even the UK Parliament, on which we were modelled, they have all become rules based, and we must become much more non-discretionary rules based for Parliament to function better.
You have said a lot about the workings of the upper house as well, and the way it has been functioning over the last 6 months or 8 months. What would you really have to say?
You are referring to the privilege motion against
me
exactly. By some members of the Rajya Sabha some months ago, right, because I had proposed some changes. Let me repeat what I said. Actually, I wrote it in a column in a major newspaper, but many people tend not to read the article. They just read the headline and draw some wrong conclusions. And I also want to clarify, I served 9 years in the Rajya Sabha myself before shifting to the Lok Sabha. I have immense respect for the constitutional role of the Rajya Sabha and for the many wise and important members of the Rajya Sabha who shape our country's policies. But let me point this out. Our parliament the structure was decided even before independence and based on 19th century standards in the UK rather, House of Lords, as far as Rajya Sabha is concerned. Now, in the 20th century, the House of Lords itself has changed. So today we have a situation where we have a lot of logjam between the two houses, because the Rajya Sabha can indefinitely hold up any bill decided in the Lok Sabha. Now, in the Lords, they changed it twice, once in 1911 and again in 1949, so that instead of indefinite veto, the Lords has the ability to delay bills by 1 year. The reason is very simple. The House of Commons, like our Lok Sabha, depends on popular opinion of the day, of the year, and it can get carried away and do rash things. The idea of the upper house is that it is not immediately elected. In the UK it is nominated, ours is indirectly elected with a 6-year term, longer viewpoint. The idea is to act as a brake, to urge caution so that the lower house doesn't do something rash.
But here it seems...
But let me just complete. I think it is important that an upper house which is not directly elected has that purpose of acting as a brake to urge caution, so that over a year the country can decide if it still wants to go ahead with the ideas of the popular house, the lower house, or you have a second thought about it. But to have a complete veto, Other countries have moved away from that, and that is what I had said we must examine.
But when you see the Indian example of the way the upper house functions, we see that the entire politics inside the upper house seems to be, driven by one factor, and that is the bench strength, obviously where the government is in a minority. How do you think that the politics will shape up? Because at the moment it looks like a fight between Modi and the anti-Modi forces inside the upper house, and as you said that the upper house job is to put a brake, some kind of a caution to whatever is happening, but that kind of a role we haven't seen Rajya Sabha playing.
Actually, let's be fair, it's not just the Rajya Sabha which is stuck up, even the Lok Sabha is in complete logjam.
No, when I say about the bench strength, obviously...
Let me clarify. I think that is a misunderstanding. I think it is a misunderstanding that bench strength is what decides it. Because yes, you are right about Rajya Sabha, but look at Lok Sabha. In the Lok Sabha, the government has bench strength, right, and yet it is not able to function. I'll tell you what is the real problem. The real problem is we don't have crystal clear rules. For example, just to use a Lok Sabha example, right now it is stuck up because whether the debate on demonetization should be on a voting or non-voting basis. So we have rule 184 or we have rule 193. But there is no rule to decide which rule should apply, and it depends on consensus. When it says speaker's discretion, it actually means consensus in the business advisory committee, which is all the parties. There are 40 parties or 36 parties. And so any party can hold up consensus by saying, no, we don't agree. Yeah. So what happens is usually government doesn't agree to a voting discussion. Why should they? There is no requirement for it. Why should they want to face embarrassment? And similarly, opposition insists on a voting requirement correctly because it is their opportunity to press and embarrass the government. Now, we must change from this discretion and consensus to a rules-based system. I have proposed the following, that if 50 MPs sign on a requirement that we must discuss a subject, could be demonetization, could be something else, then it must be discussed. And for a voting discussion, it should be 100 MPs to sign. Right. If 100 MPs sign, then nobody should have any discretion. Right. It should be a voting discussion. And we should raise the no confidence motion from 50 MPs to 150 MPs.
But if you have raised this point, what is the hitch which your point has faced? With the
status
government?
Quoism, because we are stuck in a convention of last 70 years, and people are used to doing things their own way. But if we look outside of our system and we look at what happens in UK, what happens in America, what happens in Australia, Germany, then we realize that they have faced some of these problems and they have changed their systems. And our problem is this hesitation about change, this resistance to change.
So which means we need more MPs like Jay Panda to write about this issue, to highlight this issue?
No, I think there are many competent MPs in both houses, and we have fallen into a routine of many decades. It's not easy to change a habit. It applies to people as much as it applies to Parliament. If we are used to certain habits, it's very difficult to change a habit.
Okay, Jay, coming back to the demonetization bid and Modi government's bid to evolve the society as a cashless society. But when you take the case of Odisha, it's a by and large poor state where we have seen a low penetration of banks. How would you really convince the people who are standing in the queues in your state that look, this is a positive move? It's a move which can help you in the long run. It's difficult to believe, like people in Kalahandi and in those regions, to tone their mind for a cashless society.
Odisha has problems in this transition process, like most of the country has problems, urban and rural, but we have different kinds of problems. I got attacked a lot when I reported. I spend at least 10-12 days a month on average in my constituency, and people are aware of that. I go around villages meeting a lot of constituents, and about 70% of the population of my constituency does not routinely use 500 rupee and 1000 rupee notes. Okay. Because there is still poverty level, we are still transitioning out of it. This is improvement over what used to be the case 10 years ago. Right. But 70% of them don't routinely, some of them have never actually seen a 1000 rupee note. Now, for them, the immediate crunch was not so much because they are used to 10 rupee, 20 rupee notes and 100 rupee notes at the most. Right. That's one aspect. The other aspect is, you're quite right. Now, as we shift to more cashless, more digitized, rural areas which don't have broadband, which don't have, many people don't have smartphones, they will have more challenges. Of course, there are some solutions coming up. Normal phones, even without having broadband, are now having the, like M-Pesa in Kenya. Right. It was 10 years ago, before there was broadband. So some of this will happen, but the reality is this transition process is very challenging, and lots more has to be done on war footing to ease the discomfort that many citizens are facing throughout the country, including Odisha.
But I mean, as a journalist, I would take this with a pinch of salt when you say that, you also know that people are facing problems in your state, and it's not that it's like a rocket science is going to just work in a day or two. It's an evolving process which will take time. When you talk about a cashless society, or when people facing problems in demonetization, it's a tough political decision which Naveen Patnaik government has also taken. It's a kind of a political risk when you stand by BJP and you say that, look, we are with you on this demonetization move.
Let me make it very clear. We are not standing by the BJP. We are standing by the nation. Okay. Because we think it is a good economic decision, first step. Now, we have not shied away from pointing out all the difficulties. Okay. And it's not just Naveen Patnaik and the BJD. You've also seen Nitish Kumarji in Bihar with the JDU. There are leaders, I think, in the country that are willing to go beyond their political compulsions and talk about what's good for the country. I agree with you. There are great challenges. One of the biggest challenges, the rate at which the currency is being replenished. As I understand, out of more than 15 lakh crores of demonetized currency, only about 6 lakh crores has come back into the system. Now, all of it doesn't have to come back into the system. The whole idea is that you will have less currency. Right. But 6 lakh crores is not enough. You need maybe 50% more or maybe double of this currency, so that in particularly rural areas that are going to face bigger challenge in going digital and going cashless, the situation will be eased. And also let's understand something. We are not going to be 100% cashless. There is no country that is 100% cashless. Even the most advanced countries still have quite a chunk of cash transactions. I'll be very happy if we get to 70-75%, and 80% would be fantastic.
With the way, there have been reports in your local dailies in Odisha, I was going through that, how where the manner in which BJD and BJP have been coming together on various issues. Is that a signal towards some kind of an alliance or some kind of cozying up of relations between BJD and BJP?
At the beginning of this interview, I pointed out that there are issues on which we oppose the action of this government at the nation in Delhi, specifically on Mahanadi and Polavaram, and there are other issues also. But on many other issues like GST and demonetization, where we don't see a conflict between Odisha's interests and the national interest, we definitely will stand up for national interest. Now, are we cozying up? I don't see any particular signs of it. We had the same attitude. If you notice something, BJD is not a party that disrupts parliament. No matter who is in government here, when the UPA was there, we had the same issues. We opposed the union government on issues that we didn't agree with, but there were many times that we also supported it on what we thought was being done right for the country.
So does BJD still maintain an equidistance with parties like Congress and with parties like BJP? Are you still saying that you maintain that equidistant relationship?
The party president, Shri Naveen Patnaik, has reiterated this many times. Even recently, few weeks ago, he has reiterated this. There was a little bit of controversy in Odisha about some statements of some party members, right. And then he clarified that and insisted that that's not the case. That it is BJD is not leaning towards an alliance with Congress or with BJP. Let's be clear. When we started in 1997 December, we immediately went into an alliance with BJP under Vajpayeeji's leadership, and we were part of the NDA 1. But we have not been a part of the alliance for now quite a long time. It's approaching a decade now. Right. And the people of Odisha have given support for this approach that BJD has taken.
But like you yourself have said that, those kind of reports have been dismissed. But Bhartuhari Mahtab himself said that, it's high time now that BJD should form some kind of an alliance with parties like Congress. So let's not get into whether you'll cozy up to Congress or BJP. But given the fact that 2017 Uttar Pradesh polls are going to be a major deciding factor for the way the political narrative will evolve. People are looking at, in fact, the talks have already begun, between parties that we should form some kind of a grand alliance against the Moditwa forces, if I could say. So will BJD be open to the idea of joining? Because at the moment you're saying, of course, that you will not join any front, but politics is dynamic, nobody is an untouchable. So will BJD be open to the idea of joining some kind of an alliance or a grand alliance?
Since you mentioned my colleague Shri Bhartrihari Mahatab, I think it's important to clarify. That's what I was referring to, that some statements had been attributed to him in the media, which were clarified by the party president, Naveen Patnaik. And related to that, he was in fact even issued a show cause notice, and he had to clarify that there is no two views in the party. Now, I'm not the person to decide whether our party will change its current stand. It has to be discussed inside the party, and at some point a final call will be taken by Shri Naveen Patnaik. And since he has himself clarified the issue, there's no point in speculating about it.
Thanks so much, Jay, for coming on the program.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure.
That's it on this episode of To The Point. See you next time with another personality. Goodbye and thanks for watching.